Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Homeschool for the Soul. It is starting to be hot in California, so my glasses just fogged up. I will clean them and we'll keep going. I'm Staci Travisano. Today, I'm here with John Tate, we are so thankful for him spending some time with us today because he's going to share some awesome insight with us, but we are just thankful for the time that you are giving us today because time is precious to everybody. But thank you so much for sharing the time with us today. And today we're going to be talking about, John's going to be sharing some insight with us about what it's like to process and respond and live out your faith after you hear medical news that can be less than ideal, but could actually even be scary. So John, thank you again for being here, and tell us a little bit about who you are, about your family, for those of us that don't already know you.
Very good. Well, thanks for having me, Staci. Appreciate it. I live here in Laverne with my wife. We just had our 15th year anniversary. I'm making sure that's correct. Yeah, that's right. We have two kids, Isabella, who is finishing 6th grade, and AJ, who's finishing 2nd grade. So we, many of us share the same drama of what's going on right now in the world and not having the normal end of year stuff going on. I work for a large bank. I'm a consultant for them, and for the last 10 years, I've been lucky enough to work here from home. So been a member of Real Life from the very beginning. So.
And your wife is an educator. So while you've
Yes.
worked from home before, you haven't had your kids home before during the day, all day while you're working, and also have your wife home working all day and also living through a pandemic. So yes, you're right. It is a different time. So John, will you share with us a little bit about your health diagnosis that you learned about a few years ago? Start with what made you think that you needed to go to the doctor, and then what happened when you went to the doctor?
Very good. So I had a bump on my right shoulder blade back here, had it for years, and it was very slowly getting bigger. Went to my normal doctor, had it checked out as soon as we noticed it, and he said it was just a common injury. It's a winged scapula, so your shoulder blade kind of pops out a little bit. And it didn't hurt me. I had the same amount of strength in both sides. It wasn't painful. And so I kind of just lived with it. It was really cosmetic, no big deal. Flash forward a few years, my wife Tiffany and I started working out again, got a lot stronger. And then it's more of, I don't want to keep building muscle on a damaged area. So I finally went back to the doctor and said, hey, can we look into maybe surgery? Something we wouldn't do earlier, but now, I don't want to keep damaging it. And so he said, sure. So he finally ordered an MRI. And in the past, I'd already gone to physical therapy for it, didn't get any better. And I've had x-rays on it. It wasn't a big deal. So the MRI is what finally showed something. I went to a specialist who would have been the surgeon to work on it. And then he saw the MRI and said, it's a mass. It doesn't look right. Just to be safe, let's send you over to City of Hope, which local people know. It's a great cancer specialty center. Just in case. And he said, worst case scenario, your worst case scenario, you're there at the best place to help you. And then best case scenario, they'll say, nope, it's nothing bad. And then come back to me and I'll fix you. So I went over to City of Hope, saw a specialist there, and they're all specialists. And they did, on my first visit, they took a biopsy of it and immediately sent me down to get a CT in my chest, which is, that alone was kind of scary. I said, okay, why that? But they basically said, if it is, you want to make sure we check everything out. So flash forward a week, I came back with my dad to City of Hope. And that's when they told me that it is cancer. It's sarcoma. And then even worse news is that I was stage 4, meaning that it had spread, and it spread to both of my lungs. So there is over a dozen spots that we could see in the scans in both of my lungs. And so that was December of 2016.
Holy moly. So you had been living with this annoying thing on your shoulder. You go to the doctor and you think that, I'm glad they're being careful and we're going to do surgery. And within a week you went from having something that was a nuisance to a lot of bad news real fast.
Correct. Yep.
Because lung cancer, for those of us that don't know, it's not one of the ones you want, right?
Right, and it's weird because it's cancer in my lungs, but it's not lung cancer. So there's a difference there, which is totally strange. But we don't have to get into that.
Okay. But still, you hear those words, and that sounds like that's not just something on your shoulder, and that you had 12 spots is also significant, right?
Yeah, stage 4. I mean, that's the worst. That's the worst you hear. So, and
So
then
what did? Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think everyone who's in that situation who is told they have cancer, the first question they want to ask is, "How long do I have?" Which I think is human to ask that question. The most doctors, very carefully preface it that it's just an average number. They look at all the cases with this particular cancer, your age, your demographic, your male, female, whatever, and that's a raw number. But again, you can't help but want to know what that is. So I did ask that, and he said, statistically, the cancer you have 19 to 26 months.
Oh my goodness. And so rewinding to that time, your kids were how old when you heard that you had 19 to 26 months maybe
they
left?
were 4 and 8.
Goodness. And then you and Tiffany would have been only married 12 years at that point too, right? You had,
right.
Yeah, goodness. And so what happened next? What did you worry about, or where did you go to? What was your next step after hearing the news? What who did you tell first? I mean, you told your dad was with you, but then did you call Tiffany right away? How did you decide who you were going to talk to about what you were going to do?
Great question. So, I mean, I think most of us, I think I kind of knew something it was going to be bad news, if you will. I wasn't dreading it. I mean, obviously we did a lot of praying beforehand, and it didn't turn out as I wanted it to. But yeah, I mean, me and Dad hugged it out and shed some tears there in the office and came home. And it was, I don't remember what was said on the way home, but we got to my house, and then Mom was driving over, and he asked if I wanted to tell her, and I said no. So I went outside with the dog, and with the windows and doors closed, I could hear my mom's reaction. It was horrible. I'd never want to hear a sound like that again. But he told her for me, and then my wife came home from school, and she told me. I told her as well, and you just begin to process it. And that first week was just horrible. I mean, so many thoughts go through your mind. The dreams you have for your future, the plans you have made, foolishly now without God, right? Those are all in question. And then, horrible thoughts go through your mind, like, are my kids going to remember me? Stuff like this. I think it's very human to think that those thoughts. I mean, I look back at my memories before I was 8 years old, and I don't have very many. And so, a lot of those are selfish thoughts, but I think they're human. And, I was very, very fortunate to have a very close cousin of mine. She's since passed. She was diagnosed almost to the day 2 months before me with aggressive breast cancer. And so, I go from one day over at her house making some healthy dinners for her to, the next week I'm on their couch and we're all crying together and I'm sharing my news. And so it's very, very interesting time. But I thank God that I had her. I mean, I wish she never had to go through that. I mean, of course not. But her friendship, I mean, she's family, but being able to talk to her and going through this together, and having someone to process it and say, this is normal that you're thinking this way. And it was nice to have that. But that first week was really bad. I mean, crying ourselves to sleep and just a lot of horrible thoughts. And I mean, and then on your knees praying to God that I have more time. And I remember thinking that I think I talked to Pastor Jim, is it selfish to pray for more time? I mean, because obviously this is what's meant to be, but I think it's just very, very, very human. So we went back a week later, and the prognosis kind of changed. So a lot of prayers I felt was answered right away. They said that the cancer you have, all the specialists got together, reviewed my case, and they said, we don't know 100%, and only time will tell as we watch you, but we think you probably had this a very long time. So many, many, many years, growing very slowly. And if it stays that way, growing very slowly, you have a lot more time, way more than what this hard, cold average
Mhm.
number says.
Oh
So
my goodness.
yeah,
That's a real, and how long, so was that another week that you had to
it was
process this
about,
like terrible news?
yes, it was about a week later to come back after their team had a chance to review my case and come up with a plan of as far as what they're going to do as far as treatment.
Goodness. And what a like roller coaster of 2 weeks to go from, I think there might be something to like, oh my goodness, it's terrible, to it's not fixed, but there's hope.
Right,
Um,
exactly.
so fast forward, and I want to go back to the steps that you took, especially talking about your faith after that and through that time. And you talked about how important prayer was, and still, I know, is for you. But when you think about now and what we're living through, and the decisions we're going to have to make in the months and weeks and maybe years to come from, and you have kids, so do we send them back to school? Do you let your wife go back and work at school? Do we, when do we get to see friends? How do we make those choices? When do we decide to go on vacation? And like we had talked about, you and I earlier, when there's a vaccine, do you take it or do you not? Um, all of those steps that we're going to have to, and decisions we're going to have to make, are going to have some fear behind them because we just don't know. And there's so much unknown. So what would you say to someone as they're trying to process, especially from a place of fear, and we're all hearing real time, very coming at us, such fast information. What is some advice that you could share with someone who has not yet been through the kind of news that you've had? How can we process that fear? What is some advice you could give us about that?
Great questions. I can just share what I've done and what's worked well for me in processing this. Um, uh, Honestly, one of the easiest things that I did in going through this was just to turn it over to God. Was just to scoot one seat over and say, "All right, you're driving now." I mean, because honestly, there's nothing I can do aside from maybe getting a second opinion, talking to the experts, and then using the knowledge that you have to make the best decision at that given time. Obviously, consulting God and lots of prayer on your knees, but just turning it over to Him that I am out of control. This is I'm not in control. This is not. Um, I don't have the power to really change the outcome, and so I'm along for the ride. And once I did that, I mean, the amount of stress that was taken off my shoulders was just enormous. And then after that, it was like, I don't know how long I have. I don't know what's in store, but for some reason, this is happening, and I just pray that that you shine through me to other people, that your light can be shown through this, that something good comes from it. I mean, I've always, in my entire life, I've always felt that everything happens for a reason. I've been a Christian my whole life, and so I've always felt that that's God, of course, doing that. My favorite verse has always been Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, which is, I mean, just a simple, well, life order, right? Just trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding, and then in all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will lead your path straight. So that's what I've done. So in answer to your question more directly, with everything going on, I mean, there's so much information out there. We're in a world now of social media where you don't know if it's true or not, fact or not. You don't know which source to trust. I mean, you have two
So
friends or
good.
family
So good.
members, yeah, who you love very, very much, who have completely different views. And so it's very hard to navigate that. And it's just like when going through my treatment, you may have two different doctors who have different ideas. I mean, you have to ask a lot of questions and try to, you know, find the information you need so you feel comfortable making your decision. And ultimately, making that decision through a lot of prayer with God too, as well.
I love that. I love all of that. That's so helpful. So now rewind back to, you hear this news and you spent a lot of time in prayer, but you made a pretty big faith decision not long after finding out that you had more time, in conjunction with a super awesome person in your life. But tell us about that journey. How did you go from that to then that faith decision? And like you said, you'd been a Christian your whole life, but
Right. So again, been a Christian all my life, and embarrassed to say that I never got baptized. And so here I am, close to my 40th birthday, having had the bad news. I mean, and it really turns your life upside down. Like I said, all the plans and the dreams and what you expected to come out of your life is nothing certain anymore. So your car just went from this direction, you can see down the road, to now you're going down a road full of fog. You can't see what's ahead of you. And so, uh, like I said earlier, I mean, just getting over and letting God drive, that was part of it. And part of being obedient, I felt, was I need to make this call, not be embarrassed as I may have been in the past, and decide to be baptized. I mean, why wait? Because this devastating news you get, that really puts a perspective on what's important and your priorities, and what you need to do to get right with with your friends and family here on earth, and it's more importantly, get right with the Lord. So I was fortunate enough to, at the same time, my best friend's son, who's like a son to me, Grady, he was going, so we got baptized at the same time in the same pool, which is just fantastic. It made it even more special.
Oh my gosh, it was such a special day. Like, and I love when the memory pops up on Becky's Facebook memories, because it was such an extraordinary day. I remember, like, everybody was crying. Grady's amazing. Like, just watching, oh my gosh, it was so incredible. And I think, like, as a parent, for me to watch and knowing what you had been through, and then, because I think, like, Pastor Jim and I had even gone to pray with you and your family prior to that, when we were waiting to hear news and what you were going to do
Yes.
for treatment and stuff. And so I had not walked alongside you as much, but even just that little bit and the bits that I knew, that was such a powerful moment for me, but as a Christian. But then to watch what that did for your kids, to watch you get in that water, oh my gosh, was so cool. And then fast forward to even further, I got to baptize Bella later, in our pool at the church. God is just so good. And you
Yes.
have taken a series of scary things and turn them into goodness for God's kingdom. You have been a tremendous servant leader at our church, with different things that you've been involved with the ways that you guys encourage your kids to serve, and the leaders that they are. And we are just so thankful for you. How are you doing in the midst of this? Do you feel like you are, because of what you are living with and because of what you've been through, you're a little bit more cautious? Do you think you are a little bit more hopeful than some other people would be? Where would you say you measure up on the, like, fear versus no fear at all in what we're going through right now?
Good question. So I am more concerned because part of my things, they did surgery, they took my shoulder out, and then I actually had open chest lung surgery. So you hear about this virus and how it affects your lungs. That off the bat is concerning. And so I am playing it a little safer. I'll probably be a little behind the average person as far as going back out. But that being said, I'm not hunkering down in fear. You have to put your trust in God that you're doing the right thing. And obviously, it just, as a husband and a father, I'm protecting of my family, and I want my sister, my parents, and all the rest of our family to be safe. But no, definitely it is. All we hear from the news and social, it's either far this way or far this way. It's either you have to stay in, don't go out, and wear a mask, and hold your breath and everything else. And then the other side is
Hold your breath out.
and then
like, spin around 3 times and
right, yeah,
like, I know that's not what it is, but that's what it feels like sometimes.
it does. So I'm very much the other side is it's no big deal. Don't even bother washing your hands. But no, I mean the answer to me is somewhere in the middle there, and that's where it's smart. And you have to navigate that to the best of your ability with the information that you have. So I'm not fearful. I'm not scared of this. Just like for most days, again, you have your ups and down days with the cancer. So perfect timing. I had my scans like 2 weeks ago. I go every 6 months for scans, and then I had my follow-up appointments via phone this time because of what's going on yesterday and today. And so leading up to that, you get a little nervous, you get a little anxious because
Every
who's to
time you
say
go,
that,
right? Every
yeah,
time. I have heard people that are cancer survivors talk about that fear never diminishes leading up to the scans and getting the results. And you're living with a different processing every time you hear it. So you go through it every time, right? Every time, every 6
right.
months. Gosh. Okay. So then what happened when you got them back?
Oh, I'm sorry, what was that again? You said when I got what?
When you got the scans back this time, what did they say?
Oh,
Sorry.
yeah.
I got off.
So for the past 3 years, I'm stable. There's been no reoccurrence in my shoulder where they took the original tumor out. And then my lungs, there's, we knew about 24 spots that show up on the scans. What I didn't say is when I had my first lung surgery, because they were going to originally go in and get all those spots out, take about a third of my lungs out, I'd still be able to, function. When they went in for that first surgery, um, I found out, of course, after when I woke up, but he saw what he described as specks of sand all over my lungs. So he took them out, sent them to the lab, and they were all cancerous. So we know that there's cancer throughout both my lungs. But in these past 3 years, I've gone every 6 months for scans. The spots that we know about that we can see on the scans, they have not increased in size, and no new ones have shown up on the scans. So I'm what
That's
they call
awesome.
stable. So for this type of cancer, I'll take that
Yeah.
any and every day. So that's where we're at. But again, before your scans, we get that they call it scanxiety, silly cancer term there. But yeah, you get a little nervous, and you pray a little extra is what happens. I think it's human and normal to feel that way. Part of me feels guilty that I'm not trusting 110%. I'm trying my best to, but like you have it with everything. You have the ups and down days. There's days where I feel guilty because I've wasted time because every day is a gift, especially when you have something like this. It really comes to the front of your mind. But in reality, I mean, cancer or no cancer, it's the same way. We don't know what happens tomorrow to any of us, and so we really need to treat each day like that it's valuable and we're given time and we got to make the best of it. So
Well, absolutely. And I don't want to cut you off there, but I think that is a brilliant and beautiful way to end this conversation, is to say that every day is a gift, no matter what we're living through. You are a living testament of that. And I know that you, like you said, some days you are like, oh my gosh, I love that I have this time with my kids. I love that we have this extra time at home or whatever. And some days we forget to be excited, but every day is a gift. And if we lean into our faith and remember that we're not alone, God never said it would be easy, but he said he would never leave us. And so thank you so much for sharing your heart and your honesty about the good and the bad and the scary, and that we don't have to have it all together, but we do need to remember that God is for us and that he won't forsake us, and that we need to be in prayer with him because he wants a relationship with us. We are so thankful for this time we got. And I'm so excited for people to hear your story and to be encouraged and inspired by it. So thank you again. Say hi to your wonderful people. I miss seeing them at church one day.
yes, they miss you.
Oh, they're so precious. I love them. But yes, say hi to them. And I look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stacy. Talk to you soon.